Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to today's Partner Infopedia web conference. This is Dynamics 365 Fast Track Tech Talk. Today's topic is Project Service Automation. Presenting with us today from Microsoft, we have two Fast Track Program Managers. We have James Bamford and we have Dean Hardy. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to your first speaker. James, you now have the floor.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for attending today's Tech Talk on Project Service Automation. As you may know, Project Service Automation is an end-to-end solution for project-based organizations to manage sales, resourcing, service delivery, and billing for client-facing billable projects. It finds use where customers have a need to engage with their clients throughout the project lifecycle. And today, let's dive into Project Service Automation. So today, we're going to cover a couple of the different objectives. We're going to cover and answer the question, what is Project Service Automation for Dynamics 365? And then we're going to go through what are considered the different phases of Project Service Automation in a project within it. So we'll talk about opportunity management and quotes. We'll talk about how to plan a project within Project Service. We'll talk about resource management and team collaboration once that project has been planned, how our team members are going to enter their time, expenses, and how that relates back to customer billing. And then finally, we'll end with project status tracking, how we know that our projects that we set up within Project Service Automation are going to be successful. So, as I mentioned before, Project Service Automation is an end-to-end solution that provides project-based organizations with a single system of customer engagement for sales, resourcing, delivery, and billing. Project Service Automation, or as I will now refer to it as PSA, is an integrated customer experience for organizations that deliver customer-facing and revenue-focused projects. This includes planning, estimating, and pricing of multi-day projects, optimizing resource utilization, tracking and approving project tasks and financing, and monitoring performance metrics. And we do all that with a couple of different project roles within PSA that ship out of the box. Some typical project roles that can be associated throughout the PSA project process are, but not limited to, a COO, or a practice director, someone who's responsible for overseeing the entire service delivery organization. Our account manager is someone who works directly with the customer, building out the opportunities, the quotes that eventually become a project contract. We have our project manager, someone who's responsible for managing the delivery of the project. And then we may also have a resource manager, someone in our organization who's responsible for staffing and resourcing all the various different projects in our organization. This could potentially also be the project manager, but it could be both if we so choose to. We have our team member, the person who's responsible for working on the different tasks and details of the project. And then finally, we have our end customers, those who are going to be responsible for delivering a successful project too. A few good things to know before we get started. As you may be aware, Microsoft has a lot of applications designed to aid you in your project portfolio management. So let's quickly take a look at what's currently out there. The first one that I'm sure everyone is probably pretty familiar with is Microsoft Project. So Microsoft Project, it's a part of Microsoft Office. It's a program that runs locally on your PC or your Mac, and it is something that can be integrated with Project Service Automation, and we'll see how that happens here momentarily. There's Microsoft Project Online, which is part of Office 365 and basically the online version of Microsoft Project. And finally, we have Microsoft Project Server. So Microsoft Project Server is something that's part of SharePoint 2016. It's an on-premises solution, and it is not integrated or related to Project Service Automation. If you want to learn a little bit more about each one of these three, you can follow this link here on this slide when we send out this slide deck after this presentation. But with that, let's go ahead and let's get started and dive into opportunity management and quotes for Project Service Automation. We'll begin on an opportunity record where our account manager is working on an opportunity for Chic CRM. And on this slide right here, you'll see all of the standard functionality for Dynamics 365, like putting together our stakeholders, assembling the sales team, and outlining the business case for the opportunity. But if we scroll down a little bit further, then what you'll see here is the actual work that's being requested from the customer as it pertains to the project. We can see that they're requesting some consulting work that will go along with their CRM implementation, and then the development and customization. You will notice that even at the opportunity stage, we have the ability to capture the billing terms that we anticipate using in this deal. And this is a complement to the existing functionality that we have for selling product-based items. And that is what you'll see here with these different licenses that we've attached to this opportunity. You can see also, if we scroll even further down, that we have a couple of different quotes worked up for this opportunity already. So quotes can easily be added to help ensure that the engagement will be profitable. And we can see if we dive into our first quote, CRM quote 1, at the very top we have this new quote analysis section that is particular to PSA. And at this section of the forum, the account manager will have a direct view as to whether or not this will be a profitable and successful engagement by checking things about the gross margin, as well as whether we're estimated to finish within schedule and also importantly within budget. If you scroll farther down on the quote, you will find a profitability analysis view that is also unique to PSA. Here, you'll find all the costs and revenue spread out over a couple of different views inside of the profitability and analysis section. Below that, we also have a section called Comparison to Customer Budget. So you will see here that we have captured the original customer expectation in yellow in terms of what the budget is anticipated to be. You will also see that our delivery team has begun to commit their estimates in green. And from what we can see here, we can be sure that we're going to have a successful implementation, one where our yellow is bigger than our green, which is always a great thing. If we drill further into the quote by opening up one of our project-based lines, we'll see even further detail of what we actually are looking at. So we look at our development work right here. In this case, I can see that I have 4 different types of labor that are included and will be sent over to the customer for consideration. So things like my labor for my architect role, my developer role, my project management. I've also included things like my start date and end date that I anticipate them being available and necessary for this project, my quantity of working hours, and then finally my sales extended amount and my cost extended amount. We also have a chargeability view behind the scenes that sits that contains all the different sales amounts and standard pricing and the cost amounts for all these different labor classifications. So, as I mentioned, since this is this organization is an IT consulting shop, we have roles like architects, technical consultants, etc. And we also frequently charge our customers for expenses that are incurred on the project. And I have some flexible pricing mechanisms here of either passing these through at cost or flexible pricing based on some sort of arrangement that maybe I've worked out with my customer. I can also make the distinction of where this work will get done based on the resourcing unit, which can contain different prices and different margins based upon possibly a geographic location or just a grouping of different divisions within my IT organization. And all this helps the account manager indicate the right side of estimates for my delivery team and the right sales pricing, labor pricing, and expense pricing in order for him or her to help make the deal. If I go back up to my top quote line level, I can see right here that my quote line is directly connected to the project entity within project service automation. So from the quote, we can navigate to the project where we can gather the data to show that this engagement will be both profitable and successful. So before I switch over to the project planning stage, let me check with Dean to see if there are any questions. Looks like we don't have any questions.
Nothing at this time.
Nothing at this time? All right. So then let's go ahead and let's move over to the project planning stage within PSA. So inside the project, we can see that this is where our service delivery team will enter their estimates for the work that needs to be done. Entering the project right here, you can see that we are still in the quote stage, and if we need to go back and forth between the quote and the project, we're easily able to do so from right here. So this is where our service delivery team will enter in their estimates for the work that needs to be done. And we look at the work breakdown structure of the project. We can see a Gantt view of all the tasks and date estimates associated with the project. This is completely editable by the project manager and is commonly based on a project template. So if we do this type of work on a repeatable basis, then setting up a project structure can be greatly simplified. In this view, we can open up individual tasks and we can adjust the schedule as needed, as well as many other points of consideration right here, such as the effort hours, the number of resources necessary, the role that's associated with the task, etc. If we switch to the project estimates view, we can see all the financial implications of the decisions that we have made thus far within our WBS. So if I look across the duration of the project from the sales view, I can see that this project will end up costing the customer about $98,000. And then if I switch over to the cost view, I can see that the project will end up costing me about $67,000. So right from this view, I have the ability to make sure that this is going to be a profitable engagement for me from a service delivery perspective. And this view right here is also where we could potentially create an integration with Microsoft Project, where with a Microsoft Project file, we can upload our tasks into PSA to help populate a WBS, or we can even export our WBS out to Microsoft Project to kind of create a parent-child relationship between the two, where we can make our edits in one and then have those populate down to the child in whatever we make that relationship. Now that we have our planning set up, we can start to begin to staff our project. So the project template that we previously built comes along with a virtual team that we can staff. And we can see here from this view that we have a couple of generic resources set up for where we have some spots available to begin staffing our project. So at this point right here, let me mention that there are 3 ways of staffing projects within project service automation. The first one is for the project manager to search for qualified candidates right from this screen, and we'll see that momentarily. The second is to route the staffing needs to a dedicated resource manager, which we talked about at the beginning of this presentation when we talked about the different roles associated with PSA. And the third is to allow your team members to apply for open positions on projects. But in this case, if we want to directly reserve somebody's time, in this case we'll say a developer, we can select the role and then click Hard Book from this screen. Once we do so, this will take us to a presentation of all the qualified resources that fit that role. So from this screen, we can see their skills and their availability, all by just mousing over the resource's name and looking at all the different skills and availability that they possess. So from mousing over Jay Peeler's name right here, I can see that Jay is fairly proficient in both .NET and C#. He's okay at C++, but more importantly to me right now, he is 100% available. I can also see items here like his target utilization rate, if he had one, and then also his cost and billing rate, if those were filled in by his manager. So, given the current workload and time period available for Jay, I can go ahead and I can book him right here. And once we have that resource, we can move on and begin booking the other open resources on our project. As I mentioned, the second way of staffing a project is to submit a resource requirement request to a resource manager. So this can be done by creating a resource requirement record for the project, which we can see right here, and then simply filling out all the required information above, such as the role that we're looking for, the dates that we're looking to occupy the resource's time, possibly some location information, skills, which are very important, and then even any preferred resources or preferred organizational units that may be applicable for us. So once we have this record created, we can go ahead and submit this request to our resource manager. And if we switch over to the resource manager's view by going to resource requests in the ribbon, we will see all active resource requests for which we are responsible for. And there are certainly a variety of ways of routing and queuing options for organizations to configure to best suit their own business processes, such as by geography, role, etc., to get those resource requests to the applicable resource manager. From that resource request, if we click Find Resources for that requirement, we can see a view which will show us resources available to fulfill this request based on the resource skill requirements. And then finally, the third way of staffing a project is to allow our team members to apply for open positions on projects that can be accomplished either through the desktop or by using the Project Finder mobile application. Here, we can see an open position for an architect that we can assume our resource manager has had trouble staffing. So, as a result, the resource manager can open up the position to allow team members to apply for it. So right here, you can see by looking at our Project Finder mobile application that our team member can look for projects that they may be interested in applying for. So to find those open projects that meet their skill set and apply for those open positions, the team member can pivot amongst a couple of different views that suit their needs. So if I sort my projects by a different pivot, rather than looking at them by skills, which I'm currently looking at right now, and we can see right here that the Underglaze DW project is currently the top project for me. But if I pivot to show me projects based upon possibly who I've worked with in the past, based upon my connections, then now you will see that our Chic Dev 1 project that we have been working with throughout this demo right here is now my #1 project and has now moved to the top of the list based upon my connection to Prakash. So we can assume, based upon my connection to Prakash, that we had a positive working experience before. And from here, my BI reporting requirement is still available, so I can go ahead and I can apply for this position right now. Now that we have our project staffed, I can shift over to my delivery stage where I can use office groups to provide my team with an area to easily share information and collaborate with other team members on the project using key items such as managing documents, viewing other team members, creating a team calendar for different events associated with the project, and even getting a good group dialogue going in regards to all the different items of this project. So let me quick pause for a moment right here, and it looks like we may have a couple of questions coming in. Dean?
No, James, we had just them in the chat window.
Okay.
You're
Perfect.
good.
I'm good. All right. So now that we have our project staffed, we've entered in our delivery stage. People have begun working on the project. Now we can switch over to time and expenses so that we can move on and begin billing our customer for the work that we have begun working with. So once we switch over to that, our team members will need to enter in their time and expenses, and they can do so with this view, and we can look at this right here. So there are a couple of ways that team members can enter in their time. They have the ability to copy their time entries from a previous week. So if you are a team member that does fairly repeatable work on a week in and week out basis during the heart of a project, you have the ability to copy your time entries from a previous week, or you can simply go in and you can enter in your time entries on a one-off basis. So with that, you can enter in certainly the date that you did the work, the duration of the work performed, the project, and of course relating that to a project task will certainly be helpful. These will then get routed to a project approver and approved as appropriate. And once they are approved, then we'll be able to see those time entries start rolling in and being associated to those different tasks on the project. Same thing with expenses. So right here, this is a view of our expenses as they could be entered in by our different team members. Once those time entries and expenses are entered in, we can see that they can then be routed for approval to our project manager or anyone else designated as an approver on the project. And then that dialogue can begin between the project approver and the team member of whether the time entries or expenses can be approved or possibly sent back for further revision. But most importantly, once those time entries begin coming in, we as a project manager are able to see what happens when those time entries are applied to our different tasks. So if I look at the project tracking section of the project, I can see not only the original estimate, but also all the actuals that have been submitted and approved on the project. We can also go to the status tab to see some high-level consumption metrics to get a view on how successful the project is and how successful it is going to be. And then I can also check project status against the project contract, which was signed by the customer, to see the billing progress and time entries and bill quantities, etc. We can also navigate over to any invoices from the project contract to see invoices that have been sent out to the customer. Project actuals can also be navigated to from the project contract. And this is a handy view to see all of the financially relevant transactions that have occurred for the project. And this gives us all the information about who performed the work, what they did, and when. And certainly all this information can later be used for integration and further analysis purposes and reporting purposes later on. So, a quick summary of what we talked about today for our project service automation capabilities. We talked about opportunity management and how the account manager can begin the dialogue with the customer by creating an opportunity, quotes, and then eventually turning that quote into a project contract. We talked about how our service delivery team can plan a project by utilizing the work breakdown structure, manipulating our project tasks either inside of project service automation or possibly manipulating those project tasks inside of Microsoft Project and integrating that with PSA. This will then provide us with a project estimation, which we can use to staff our project using 3 different methods, such as hard booking of resources within the project itself, submitting a resource request to a resource manager, or even allowing our team members to add themselves to open positions on projects by utilizing the Project Finder mobile application. Once our projects have been staffed and we've entered in our delivery stage, our team members can begin submitting their time and expenses. And once those time and expenses begin flowing in, we can check out how things are going on our project by tracking things like performance against the contract and against the project itself. And of course, also, while we're tracking that performance, we can also begin billing our customer for the work that's been performed by checking out the invoices that are associated with the project contract, as well as the project actuals, which give us a more detailed view of all the work that has been performed on the project at the task level. So that right there has been our Tech Talk for Project Service Automation. Let me go ahead and pause right there to see if there are any further questions from you, the audience.
Awesome. Thanks, James. And while we're waiting for those questions to come in, folks, I would like to call your attention to the survey link that I'm posting right now. It is now in your messages window. Please, your feedback is very valuable to us. We appreciate you taking a moment to fill it out. Click the link, enter your email. You'll be taken into the survey. There's 5 questions. Our voting scale is on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the best score possible. Be sure to click on the submit button at the bottom to ensure that your feedback has been received. And with that, James and Dean, I'll send it back to you guys.
Great. Thank you, Debbie. Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you all for joining. Appreciate you joining. Looks like we do have one question. Is this included in the 365 Enterprise Edition? Yes, it is.
Great, thanks. Questions? Anybody else? This is your chance. And James, while we're waiting for those final questions to come in, do you have any final words for our audience?
If you do have any further questions or wanted to reach out to me individually, you can email me at jbamf@microsoft.com. That's J as in James, B as in boy, A as in Apple, M as in Mary, F as in Frank @microsoft.com. Or reach out to your program manager if you wish. Question from Lewis. Can we use the project entity in PSA to track projects we're working with our customer on? So, yes, so basically everything that we saw inside of this demo was using the project entity that comes as part of the PSA solution. So hopefully I answered your question right there, but yes, we would use the PSA project entity to track status against our project.
All right, I don't see any other questions. So James, did you get through your final words, or do you still have those to go?
That is all I have for today. Thank you.
All right. Excellent. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude the recorded portion of today's Partner Infopedia web conference. Again, the materials will be available on Infopedia Media in 24 hours. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter, James and Dean, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.